about React. Here is the list of topics that we will be covering in this video. We're going to be moving really quickly in this video, so feel free to pause the video if you feel like I'm going too fast. Alright, let's get started. Alright, first let's talk about the key features of React that make it worth using. First, it's declarative, which basically means that it's state-based. This means that you declare what state a component is in, and then it'll figure out how to render based upon that state. So React components are really predictable. You know exactly how it's going to be rendering based upon what you put into it. Next, it's component-based, which makes it really scalable. This means that you can create self-contained components that can basically be dropped into other components, and these components maintain their own state, so they're self-contained. So this helps you prevent your code from getting really unwieldy and enormous by creating these smaller, composable components. And third, React is really unopinionated, which basically means that it's just the view layer, which means that you can incrementally put it into your project without needing to revamp the whole thing. And because it's just a view layer, it's really small and isolated, which makes it fast and performant. Another reason why React is so fast is that it uses something called the virtual DOM. What the virtual DOM does is it takes the difference between two states of our application and makes only the minimum amount of change necessary to render those changes. Also, the virtual DOM allows us to not directly manipulate the DOM, which is really expensive, but rather our changes are made to the virtual DOM instead. Next, let's learn how to get started with and install React. Probably the best way to do this is to use Create React App, which is developed by Facebook itself. It has an enormous amount of stars, which means that it's extremely popular and tested. To use Create React App, let's just follow these instructions here. First, we need to do npx create react app my app, or we can name it whatever we want. To use npx, we need npm 5.2 and higher, so we can go to Node.js and download the latest version of Node, which will give us that npx. So let's just follow these instructions here, and let's create a different folder name. So I'm going to do npx create react app, and I'm going to name it React Tutorial. Press enter. It's going to install it and also install the dependencies, so it's going to take a little while. Let's just wait for that to finish. Now let's follow these instructions at the bottom of the screen right here. So we're going to do cd react tutorial, and then we're going to do yarn start, and that's going to automatically open up the React app in a browser window just like this. And so you see here we just have a boilerplate template right here, and we're ready to get started. Okay, now I've opened up the Create React App folder inside of my text editor. I'm going to be using Sublime Text, but you can use whatever text editor you want. Let's just take a look inside this folder to see what we have here. First, let's take a look at the index.js file. You'll see that here, this is where the app is actually rendered. You're rendering the component app onto the element root, which you can find at the index.html file, which is right here. So the app is basically being rendered inside of this root ID here. And now let's take a look at this app component right here, which is going to be this file right here. You'll see that this file is not highlighted very well, so I would highly recommend installing a JSX syntax highlighter. Different text editors will do this in different way. So here I would go to install package. Since I already have it, let me just show you where it is. Package. So the syntax highlighter that I'm using is just called JSX. So I would find something similar for your text editor and then install it. And once you have it installed, you can select the JSX syntax highlighting. I'm going to select that here. And now you can see that it's highlighted much cleaner, which is going to help us as we develop using JSX. Next, React is usually coded using ES6 syntax. So you'll see that this is not normal JavaScript. We have import React here, import logo. So import is an ES6 feature. Also this class app extends component, that's also an ES6 thing. So ES6 allows us to create classes using JavaScript, just like we can do in other languages. There's other unique things you can do with the ES6 syntax, which we'll go into a little bit later. For now, just know that React uses ES6 to help make developing React components more efficient and clean. Next, let's talk about the component or the class structure of React. You'll notice that here we have class app extends component. This component comes from React, which is basically the heart of React components. You'll see that inside of this component we have a render method which returns the element or the HTML that we are going to render in our app. So you'll see that here we have the image up here, the welcome to React, and the to get started, etc. To add on to a React component, we just basically add new methods, so we can create methods such as onClicks, etc. So to build out a component, we basically add new methods to it, and we'll go through all of the different methods that you can add on to React components. Next, React uses something called JSX syntax. Notice that we have HTML elements right inside of our JavaScript. This is kind of unusual. This JSX syntax needs to be compiled using something external. The way that I believe Create React App does this is it uses a Babel compiler inside of a Webpack, but it's all hidden away inside of this React scripts here, so we can't see it right now. We could see it if we ejected it, which would then bring all the setup stuff inside of this folder here. We could replace all of this HTML here with pure JavaScript, but nobody writes React that way because the HTML is a lot cleaner, it's a lot easier to see what your component looks like, and it's a lot more natural to write HTML than it is to write HTML using JavaScript. There's going to be a few slightly different things using JSX syntax than just pure HTML. You'll notice that here we use class name instead of just class. If you use class, it won't work properly, so make sure you use class name here. Other things that might be a little bit different are you'll need to use HTML4 instead of just for. But those things, if you make a mistake, there will be warnings in the console telling you what you need to use. Next, let's take a look at this render function. This is the foundation of React components because it actually renders what shows up on the page. So let's play around with it by replacing this inside with a h1 my app, and we're going to save it, and it's going to auto refresh just like that. And you can also place variables inside of the render HTML. You can say, let's say const title equals this is Michael's app, and then let's put title in here. The way that we put a variable inside of our JSX is we put single curly braces around the variable. So let's say title, we save, and now it says this is Michael's app. You can also put logic in here. For example, if we had const another title equals another title, and then we can have a ternary here, say, let's say we want to do something like, and this is very contrived, this isn't actually real world, but I just want to show you that you can put logic in here. We can say if true, oops, I should go back one. If true, we want to do another title, else we want to do title. We can put logic in there like that. Now it shows another title because this is true right here. Generally speaking though, we want to try to keep as much logic out of the JSX as possible and put them into helper methods above the render function. Now let's take a look at how to render lists. Let's say we have a const list. Let's just have an array of some strings. Let's say item 1, item 2, another item. To render this list, we can use a map method. So we can say list.map and then item, and then let's just basically return item here. And let's save it. Now you can see that we have item 1, item 2, and another item rendered here. To make it look a little bit nicer, we can say we can create divs around them like this to make them on new lines. So div, and then use a single curly brace to put in the variable, div like that, save it. Now you'll see that they're on new lines. Now let's learn how to set up event handlers in React. To do that, we can just add event handler attributes here. So for example, we have onClick here, and we can have a bunch of different ones. There's onClick, we can also have onMouse enter, there's also onMouse leave, we can do onKey down. Pretty much every event handler there is, you can put that into React. We can also do onSubmit for forms, not for divs. We can do onChange for inputs. We can do onFocus for inputs, and so on. There's a huge list of things that we could do. So let's just try doing an onClick handler here. And so let's say when we click on an item, we're going to call the method this.onClick, and then let's define that method up here. Let's say onClick, and when we click on it, let's just say alert clicked. Save it. Let's click on one of these, and you'll see that the alert clicked shows up. And just for fun, let's just try another one. Let's try on mouse over, on mouse enter, or on mouse over. I think both of them work. Let's just replace both of these, on mouse enter, and then we're going to say mouse entered. Save it. Let's mouse enter it, and you'll see that the alert shows up correctly. Let's try a few event handlers with inputs. So let's create an input down here, and let's just say onChange. This.onChange, let's put onChange up here, and then an event here. And then when it changes, let's console log out event.target.value, which is going to be the value of the input. Let's log that out to our console. I press Command Alt